What is up? It is Kamal Daniels, and this is the Peng Sports Podcast. It is March 31st at 7:25 a.m., and this is episode 5. I realized when listening to the episode last week that I did not say it was episode 4. So if you got turned off by me not saying that, I apologize. So I made it a priority this week to say episode 5. It's March 31st, last day of the month. What did you accomplish this month? What was your biggest accomplishment? Doesn't have to be big. You don't have to, win a championship or get a promotion. But when you look back at the month, what was your biggest accomplishment? Mine was, I had a son. Yeah. My parents don't know, but yeah, I had a son this month, and it's truly a blessing. I never thought I could love someone like this, but I really do love him. Yeah. No, I'm joking. I don't have a kid. But if I'm being serious, my biggest accomplishment this month was probably staying consistent with the podcast and staying consistent with the articles, post articles. I started this at the end of last month, so February 29th, I believe. And I've just been staying consistent, and so far, it's every Wednesday and every Friday I've been posting articles. So I'm excited, and hopefully throughout the year, that's my goal for this podcast and for the articles and for the website, to continue to post articles and continue to make podcasts. So let's get into the sports, or what you guys actually came for. Comment down below on YouTube or in SoundCloud what your biggest accomplishment was this month, if you guys want to. It's not a big deal or anything. But again, let's get into March Madness. So the Final Four is set. Houston versus Baylor, UCLA versus Gonzaga. But let's backtrack a little bit and first talk about Sweet 16. If you guys remember my picks from last week, I didn't start too great. I believe I picked Loyola to beat Oregon State, and I picked Baylor to lose to Villanova. And at first, it was looking good for that Baylor pick, but the first game I want to get into was Gonzaga versus Creighton. I think Creighton actually exploited Gonzaga a little bit at first by attacking the inside. Of course, they didn't have a answer for them offensively, but I definitely think that if you're going to beat Baylor, you're going to have to play them. Not Baylor, Gonzaga. You're going to have to play them by attacking their hole. I think that's their weakness, and then kicking it out. That's what I saw against Creighton. It worked a little bit, but Creighton just didn't have the talent to keep up with Gonzaga, of course, with the fast pace and the made shots. I think an underrated factor or an underrated feature of Gonzaga's game is they're very fit. They seem like a very fit team who doesn't run out of energy. They run up and down the court, while Creighton was doing the same thing. If you saw the game, they were keeping up with them. And somewhat the Oklahoma game before, keeping up with them, running up and down the court with them. But slowly but surely, Gonzaga gets those fast break points, those transition points, and the other team cannot, and they just can't keep up pace with them. But I think Creighton showed some weaknesses, and definitely showed some weaknesses in Gonzaga's game. The next game, the game I talked about a little bit earlier, the Loyola Oregon State game, this happened in 2018, I believe, where Oregon was sort of the last four out, but then they went on a winning streak, and they were able to win their Pac-12 championship, and they were able to advance all the way to the Sweet 16, a year where they weren't supposed to, the Pac-12 wasn't great, and I say that every year the Pac-12 isn't great, but Oregon State did the same sort of path where they were sort of outside looking in the tournament, got on a hot streak, and now they made the Elite Eight. Well, they played Houston. But Houston first played Syracuse. And the reason why I chose Houston in this game was because they match up very well against Syracuse. You know, Buddy Boeheim was getting guarded by Jarrod. And then if they switched off him, he was getting against Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes isn't, of course, as tall as Jarrod, but he's not a 6'1". He's not like a Mitchell for Baylor. So Buddy couldn't shoot over him. And that's what sort of gets what sort of got West Virginia. They would switch, and they didn't have the size to compete with Syracuse. But Houston, they don't have a tall guy, a 7-footer. They don't have a 6'11" guy, but their team is very long and very tall. You know, the shortest guy is probably Sasser. He's about 6'3". But and they don't seem to switch a lot. They seem to go off run past the screens and not switch. And I think Jarrod's definitely going to play in the NBA next level. Grimes is definitely going to play on the NBA next level. And I believe Sasser can definitely play in the NBA on the next, He can definitely maybe even play in the G League, definitely play in Europe. But Jarrod, I definitely think probably the best player on the team, even though Grimes was the Athletic Conference Player of the Year this year. But I think Jarrod's easily the best player on the team, most versatile, handle the ball. Not Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant-esque, and he passed a little like Kevin. He has a sort of his crossover like Kevin. I remember the broadcast saying he modeled his game after Allen Iverson. But, as I said, Houston's very tall, and that's where they were able to beat Syracuse. They can match them like for like because Syracuse is a fairly tall team. And then, speaking of the tallest team in the whole NCAA in college basketball, FSU, I chose FSU to make the Final Four. I thought Leonard Hamilton was the most experienced coach, and I thought athletically Florida State could beat a somewhat unathletic Michigan team. But what I see from Florida State is they don't really run a lot of plays. And I think to an extent that can help you because the other team never knows what you're going to run. And that's what gets them. The other team is always on their heels. But when you come against a well-organized team against Michigan like they did, it sort of came back to bite them. And that's what happens every year with Florida State. I won't say Juwan Howard. I will say Juwan Howard somewhat outcoached a more experienced Leonard Hamilton. I will say that. But what you can say about Florida State is they don't lose to teams they're supposed to lose to. Maybe Georgia Tech, they lost to an AC tournament, but that's an ACC championship game. It's one of those type of things. But I will say FSU does not lose to teams they're supposed to lose to. And that's where you got to give Leonard Hamilton the credit. They lose to teams like Michigan. They will lose to teams like Gonzaga. But definitely sort of disappointed in FSU for Florida State for not showing up. I definitely thought they could have played a lot better against the size that Michigan had. They could compete somewhat well against Michigan. I think Houston would have been a great game. Of course, FSU would have had to beat Gonzaga, but that would have been a great game. Two similar teams, somewhat run and gun, street ball a little bit. But FSU good season. Michigan just seemed a little bit more organized and knew what they were doing. A little bit more experienced. But the next game I want to get into was, of course, this was sort of my sleeper pick, Villanova versus Baylor. I thought Villanova could have pulled it out, of course, up 10 at halftime. But what scares me about Baylor is they seem like a very good team. They talk about the guy, Jarrod Butler, and he was an All-American this year. And I do not see see it. I see how he could have become one, of course. He doesn't take a lot of bad shots. And I'm assuming in the games and during the regular season he was making those good shots because he's getting good shots, shooting good opportunities. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't shoot bad shots. He just seems not to be making the shots. Within the tournament so far, I've been seeing the guy is Mitchell. Davion Mitchell, I believe his name is, but I know his last name is Mitchell. By far their best player. I'm so jumping ahead right now to the Elite Eight, but when he was off the floor, Arkansas looked like a better team than Baylor. But when Butler's off the floor, it looks like they don't miss a beat. Baylor's just like where they were today. But I can see how Jarrod Butler was an All-American because he takes a lot of high-quality shots, and I'm assuming during the regular season he was making those high-quality shots. That's why he was one. But by far, with no question of a doubt, Mitchell was the best player. But the most entertaining game of the C16 was UCLA versus Bama. Alabama, when I look at the Alabama team, they look like a college basketball team, if that makes any sense. They look like an amateur team, a team that has good coaching, but doesn't have any real pro shot makers. And to win the NCAA tournament, you need some just ballers on your team. And Alabama had very good players, very good scheme, played good defense, but they didn't have any shot makers. And that's what got Alabama. UCLA, probably not as talented. Yeah, they were as talented. Probably not as well coached, I would say. But they have shot makers in Jaquez and Juzang. So that's what really separated UCLA. Even though Juzang didn't even play most of that game, I believe he fouled out. But a lot of people are gonna say the overtime. I made this when there was 3 minutes left, and UCLA seemed like they were sort of pulling away and were gonna win the game. But Alabama, when you get to the Sweet 16, you don't really lose games there's not really games that you're supposed to lose. It's rare, very rare, where you see an upset type, where there's an upset kind of game. Usually the teams that are supposed to win, and like Arkansas was probably the team that's the one game I forgot to talk about. Arkansas versus Oral Roberts. Arkansas won, and they were supposed to win, And I think in Sweet 16 Elite 8 matchup, there's not really the upset factor. Oral Roberts isn't going to upset you, even though they almost did. I don't think Arkansas really it should have been that close. I feel like Arkansas, that's why they sort of lost to Baylor, is they turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, and you can't turn it on, turn it off. You got to be 100% when you're playing an elite team. But most Elite 8 games went sort of according to schedule. Baylor beat Arkansas, as I said. Houston beat Syracuse. Houston beat Oregon State. With Oregon State, to beat Oregon State, what I was noticing with the games that they played is against Oklahoma State, the coaches, they have a very good coach where he has a good rotation. The players always seem fresh. They always seem ready to go. They go on a big run at first, make their threes. Coach subs it out, subs whoever out, Ethan Thompson or whomever. And then they let the other team go on like a mini run, so they get the team and get it back into 5. And then they sub Ethan Thompson back in, and the stars back in. And then go on another run, and then be up there by 11. The other team will go on another mini run. Then he'll sub. And that's just really good coaching. I think if there's a coach of the tournament, outside of Gonzaga's coach, I think Oregon State's coach was definitely the coach of the tournament. He substitution defensively. Had a lot of open shots, and you just don't get open shots by just the consistency of the open shots they were getting is good coaching, good scheming. I don't think a lot of people realize that, you know. But clearly, least athletic, and that's what usually gets teams, you know. Good coached teams usually lose to more athletic teams, and that's why Leonard Hamilton does so well. He usually has the most athletic team. That's why he doesn't need to coach, but as much. But I believe that if there's going to be a second place or runner-up, and that's how the tournament's going, with a lot of runner-ups, because Gonzaga just looks like they're better than everyone else. I think Oregon State's coach deserves to be the coach of the tournament, at least. But anyways, Gonzaga beat USC. USC crushed Oregon. I was surprised. I thought USC would be a great matchup for Gonzaga because of their size. I think they're a tough matchup for everyone who they play. But Gonzaga handled them. And, yeah, that was the game that showed me. At first, when I chose Gonzaga, I was sort of thinking like a Kentucky kind of ordeal where it was going to be tough, it was going to be nail-biting, but nah, it's more of like a Villanova kind of deal. Remember when they won in 2018 with DiVincenzo, and there wasn't a team that could play with them. Even when Villanova was in the tournament, it was clear that they were going to win it. Everyone was really just playing for second place, and you should be happy if you make it into the finals to play them. And of course, the only upset was really Michigan, UCLA. But if you watch Johnny Juzang, if he decides to play one more year, I think he's definitely a lottery pick. But the only thing that stifle him is him being 21 years old and not 19, which doesn't make a lot of sense. If you read my article coming out this Friday, I talk about how choosing a 21-year-old over a 19-year-old should not be frowned upon. Too many teams are too worried about having this guy for so many years and choosing him when he's 19 so we can have him longer. And clearly that doesn't work with how player empowerment is now today. Players aren't staying with your team for more than 6 years. I mean, if you drive them at 17, at 19, 25? And then most people say people's prime is from 26 to 31. You're gonna miss out on their peak. You're just gonna help that guy get paid. That's all you're doing. You may make one playoff, but you're not gonna get that guy's best form. So I'm not saying, of course, you guys aren't gonna read the article now because I'm sort of spoiling it for you. I'm not saying to get Zion Williamson, choose a Thompson, I'm not telling you to choose a Thompson Robinson over Anthony Davis or anyone, whoever was in a tour, Tyler Hero over if they were even in the same draft, a Tyler Hero over Zion Williamson. I'm not saying that, but when there's a draft like a Brandon Knight and a Klay Thompson, I'm saying choose Klay Thompson over Brandon Knight. Klay Thompson, even though he may have played 1 or 2 more years extra in college, doesn't mean he's a worse prospect, and you're going to get him in his peak. If he plays 6 years for you, you're going to get him at least 2 years in his peak. That's just my thought on it. I would go more in depth on the article, of course, but I just don't believe choosing a 19-year-old who's on the fence. I believe choosing a 22-year-old who's sort of on the fence over a 19-year-old who's sort of on the fence, because the 22-year-old is more mature, you don't have to worry about certain things, and he's probably more likely to listen to your coach. And he probably has some of the things that the coach wants all the way fundamentally down. The NBA coach doesn't have to teach them. But I do believe Johnny Juzang, if he stays another year, can be a lottery pick. but I think he will leave this year, and he can definitely be a first-round pick. He can be a Devin Booker 13th pick, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis Antetokounmpo 13th pick who goes after that. I believe in the NBA draft, sort of. The top 10 picks, top 9 to 11 picks, this like those set of players you have to choose, and that's why. And if you don't choose them, and the player turns out good, that can get a GM fired. So that's why you see a lot of later 5, 6 to 10 picks getting chosen, but the GM doesn't really want to pick them. But the owner's like, if you don't pick them, and they turn out to be good, but that's something for another time. But I definitely think he can be a pick where a team actually wants him and they don't have the pressure of choosing someone else. But talking about NBA, NBA trade deadline was last week. It ended Thursday, I believe. Yeah, it ended Thursday. The team that made the biggest noise was my sort of team, the Magic. I'm not like a Jags fan with the Magic. I say I'm a sort of a fan, because if the Magic lose, I'm never going to get heated or mad, but I'm always going to pull from the Magic, always going to support the Magic, I guess. I guess I'm a bandwagon fan, but they're not good, and I'm sort of a fan right now. But they traded Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu to the Bulls for Wendell Carter, Otto Porter, and 2 first-round picks. And what I'm hearing is that first-round pick this year isn't going to be a great pick, but Orlando's probably going to get a lottery pick this year if luck is on their side or fortune is on their side. But that first-round pick this year can be a Johnny Juzang, where it's a 13th pick, or it's a 15th pick where he drops. And I don't think we have Cole Anthony and we have Marco Fultz, so we don't need a point guard. We don't need size. And they say they're going to get Jalen Green, who plays in G League right now. And Johnny Juzang, of course, would be another great addition. We don't really need size. We have Wendell Carter. We have Mo Bamba. It's definitely looking up for the Orlando Magic. They also traded away Evan Fournier. People say for nothing, but they got $17 million with that. So, this year they also traded Aaron Gordon for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and another first-round pick. Again, that first-round pick may not be a high pick, but it can get a guy like Johnny Juzang or someone else who's a solid player, but sort of slips because of he's really old, because he's 21 years old and 22 years old, because that really changes everything. But that $17 million, a lot of people saying no, but Gary Harris is on the last year of his deal. That $17 million can help re-sign Gary Harris, who I do think is a good player, and I do think can do something for the Magic in the coming years, be a leader for Markel Fultz, and be a defensive stopper, which he is, that you saw somewhat last year in the playoffs. J.J. Reddick signed with the Dallas Mavericks. I don't think it changed anything. I think the Dallas stays where they are. I think Dallas is waiting on Luka to become the guy. I don't think J.J. Reddick does anything for them. I don't think it helps a lot. Maybe spreads the floor out so Luka can drive more, but Luka gets anywhere on the court, no matter what. So, I just don't think J.J. Reddick does anything. JaVale McGee signed with the Nuggets. He used to play for the Nuggets, so again, this can be another size guy, another body. I don't really see, again, J.J. Reddick and JaVale McGee, these guys aren't impact players like they used to be. JaVale McGee, I don't think was ever really an impact player. He was in just very good positions, which sort of made him sort of an impact player with Golden State and Los Angeles. J.J. Reddick, it's just J.J. Reddick. good player, makes some threes, but he's not a game changer. You focus on him slightly on the scouting report, but you don't really focus on him. But they didn't make their teams worse. I'll say that they didn't make the teams worse. They are definitely players that make the teams slightly better, but to that next level, no, I don't think so. Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets. Again, good player, not gonna hurt the team, but will it really help the team that much to where they want to go? No, I think they're gonna have to make most of their moves in free agency, or Michael Porter Jr. is gonna have to step up. For Evan Fournier with the Celtics, again, helps, definitely doesn't hurt, but for them to reach the heights that they want to reach, it's going to go through Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and I believe you may have to trade one of them, but that's another discussion for another day. Rondo signed with the Clippers. I see a lot of people saying, yes, this is going to help the Clippers immensely. He'd see what he did with the Lakers. But this is a different role. He's not going to be the same. It's not the same role as he was with the Lakers. Yeah, he's going to hold the Clippers accountable, but who's the real leader of that team? It's very tough. See, Kyle Lowry was very underrated, but I think the Raptors respected him when Kawhi Leonard won the team. Kawhi Leonard came to the Raptors, and he and Kawhi Leonard was sort of in some other way, Rondo, there to make the team better, but the leader was Kyle Lowry. Everyone respected Kyle Lowry. I think people respect Kawhi, but Rondo's there to be the leader and the de facto guy, the guy who says everything he wants, and no one looks at him and says, okay, you're the best player, so I'm going to listen to you. And I can see some ways where Rondo can come off sort of arrogant, but I know it's just his competitive edge. And I just don't think the Clippers run that way. I don't think Rondo's the kind of guy to be, he's the kind of guy to be the glue guy, but he's not the kind of guy to be the leader, if that makes sense. He'll bring everyone together, but if you want to win, you need Kawhi to be the leader. Like last year, LeBron was really the leader of the Lakers. Rondo just sort of galvanized everyone and made sure everyone else is in order. And he held LeBron accountable and he held everyone accountable. He's going to do that with the Clippers, but it's not... He has the lion's share of it. Last year, he didn't really have the lion's share of it. LeBron had 70% of it, and he maybe had 20% of it. This year, I believe Rondo probably has to be the 70% leader. It has to be more of the leadership role, and that just isn't. That's. I don't think that's enough. I think he's going to make them better, like the other teams, but. No, I do not think it's the same role as last year, as everyone was talking about, how he's going to be so impactful, how he was for the Lakers. But the biggest trade so far was Victor Oladipo going to the Heat. And as I said a few weeks ago, the East is just as strong as the West, and this makes the East even stronger. I think Victor Oladipo makes the Heat a better team. I think this is the one trade that happened that actually made this team somewhat on the outside looking in, behind the Bucks, behind the 76ers, behind the Nets. Now I think these guys can step up to the Nets and step up to the Bucks and beat them in a series. Before I didn't believe that, but I think Victor Oladipo is that good of a player where he can. He deserves it. You have to respect him, and if you don't respect him, he can beat you when Victor Oladipo is on his game. And yeah, I think this is the most impactful deal so far. you know. And LaMarcus Aldridge signed with the Nets. I think that this doesn't do anything either. This is another one of those things that a lot of people sort of got overhyped about. If anything, this sort of scares me. Let me tell you why this sort of scares me. I think the Nets know they cannot beat the Lakers. Something that's constantly overlooked in basketball is chemistry, right? And the one thing that beats chemistry is when you have an overload of talent. You saw that with Golden State a few years ago. When they won their first championship, I believe in 2017, where the better team, where the team who had more chemistry was the Cavaliers. But Golden State was just too talented for them. And I think that's what the Nets are trying to do. They know they're not as... They probably, in a 7-game series playing the Lakers, they played the Lakers this year, they probably can't beat them. Or they probably can't beat the 76ers. And they're sort of scared of that. And that's why they know they're not good enough. So they're signing all these players because they know talent beats chemistry. Talent beats good coaching. But this sort of scares me because I definitely thought, okay, they signed LaMarcus Aldridge, but what about the chemistry factor of it? What about because that is very important. And LaMarcus Aldridge, of course, has been sitting on the bench for the Spurs, but just chemistry, we're gonna see it in a few weeks if they're just so good where they're good. They don't necessarily need chemistry, but if this team isn't talented enough, it's going to look really bad on the Nets, and it's gonna say, hey, maybe good job GM for signing all these guys, but we didn't ask that. I don't think they really. I don't know if the owner was like signing LaMarcus Aldridge, but I don't think they need LaMarcus Aldridge. I thought they had a good lineup with Blake Griffin coming off the bench. They had Roberson coming, who's a defensive stopper. Kevin Durant was coming back. Kyrie was coming back. I think Blake Griffin was a big key piece. Of course, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But what do you guys think about Brooklyn? Signing LaMarcus Aldridge. I think it's just looking a little dangerous. I do not think that it. I don't think that was necessarily a great signing for them. The Lakers signed Andre Drummond. I think this is important because this will stop some of the bleeding, even though they have been on a little winning streak without Andre Drummond, without AD, without LeBron. I just thought it would be better for them to sort of stop bleeding. Andre Drummond's going to come in without AD, without LeBron, and as I said last week, it's going to be easy adjustment when those guys come back. But the Lakers have improved. Last year, they had Rondo, who they replaced him with Dennis Schroeder. Last year, they had Dwight, who they replaced him with Andre Drummond. Last year, they had JaVale McGee, who they've replaced him with Montrezl Harrell. They've improved every player last year than this year. They signed Morris, and they kept all the guys who could keep the chemistry. And of course, Pelinka sort of got some blame, but I think we're seeing who the real problem was somewhat, and that was Magic Johnson. I won't say he was a problem, but I'll just say that it was never a job for two people. That's what I will say. It was never a job for two people, and that's what we're seeing now. Pelinka sort of has his own, has control, and he's doing good. He's doing a good job. Even though I didn't want him, I don't, I would like for Magic to stay on and help him out, but yeah, you got to give credit where credit's due. And unlike most teams in the NBA who have not improved, even though they made some signings, they didn't really improve. The Nets improved. The Suns improved with signing Chris Paul, signing James Harden. The Nets did. I think that this team has definitely improved and still has the chemistry from the years before. But one more thing I do want to bring out is I've seen a lot over social media about how, you guys let the Nets get James Harden, but you wouldn't let the Lakers get Chris Paul. Remember back in 2011 when Chris Paul got traded to the Lakers and they vetoed it. Well, first of all, it was a different commissioner, and it was sort of the early stages of player empowerment where players sort of had more control. LeBron had just went to the Heat, where you could say, well, come on, it happened in the Celtics, where they traded, but, there's always exceptions to the rule. I think that's what David Stern sort of saw, and he was like, I'm not doing this again, where, he couldn't really control LeBron, but I think he said, I'm not doing this where all these guys, or just stack these teams. I think that's what he was trying to stop. And he did. It was a different NBA back then. If that trade happens today, that 100% goes through. With Adam Silver as the commissioner, I think this happens. With more somewhat transactional news, let's switch over to the NFL, where the Dolphins traded the number 3 pick to the 49ers for the 12th pick. Then the Dolphins traded that 12th pick and the 123rd pick for the 6th pick and the 156th pick. So what does this all mean? 49ers are clearly done with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the 49ers should pick Justin Fields, but a lot of people are saying to choose BYU's Zach Wilson. I'm always going to choose the guy, who won more, who played better competition, who's bigger, who's faster, and who's stronger. He just ran a 4.44 in the 40, which is pretty good, if I do say so myself. I just don't get it. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't get it. I do not understand. I not understand why Justin Fields has dropped below Zach Wilson. It doesn't make sense to me. Why is Justin Fields dropping below Zach Wilson? I'm not a guy to play the race card all the time, but it looks a little fishy to me. Because Zach Wilson was a play for Ohio State. Would he really have dropped this low and Justin Fields did what he did at Baylor? Did at BYU? You play in better competition. Justin Fields played 5 regular season games this year. And if you watch the games, you watch him play Indiana, a game that everyone wants to bring up, but like a little shaky against Indiana. Well, they were up 21 points at one point in that game. And like Gonzaga, you're going to take the foot off the gas. If you looked at the Gonzaga-USC game, USC outscored them in the second half. You're going to take the foot off the gas in the second half. And they talk about the Northwestern game in the Big Ten Championship. Well, wasn't. If you see an interception, one of the interceptions was a pick in the end zone, and the guy caught it with one hand. It doesn't make I just don't understand. And you see the biggest game of the season, the guy who's the number 1 pick in the draft this year. Well, Justin Fields outplayed him in the biggest game of the season. Big games matter. And everyone wants to always bring up the close. Zach Williams' one blemish was the Coastal Carolina game in the big game this year, and he didn't play well. This doesn't make sense. Playing in big games matters. That's why Jalen Suggs, in some people's opinion, when people say he's above Cade Cunningham, I understand it because he showed up in the NCAA tournament this year. Even though Cade Cunningham showed up against Baylor, which was a big game. Big games matter. And Zach Wilson hasn't played in a big game this year. And we're all of a sudden just choosing this guy Justin Fields all of a sudden isn't this good quarterback where he played 5 games, where he played probably 7 games, I believe, all in total, in a COVID-ridden season. And you act like he played 12 games, and you act like he didn't win those games. Because I remember a few years back, Baker Mayfield was the first pick in the draft because he won games. And all of a sudden, because you play 2 somewhat sloppy games for playing good competition, you get punished. That's why I think the draft should really be a little bit earlier, so you don't have to overthink this, because the GM's going to get fired over this, and I don't like seeing people getting fired, because Justin Fields is clearly, he's the better prospect. And if you look at who's won the Super Bowls the last few years, who won last year? Tampa Bay. How tall is Tom Brady? 6'5". I'm bringing this up because everyone talks about how Zach Wilson, he's this new prototype, small, somewhat sneaky, athletic quarterback. Even though he's 6'3", so he doesn't really fit into the Kyler Murray build. That's what everyone's sort of comparing him to, Kyler Murray type. Who's won the Super Bowl the last year? Tom Brady. Who won the MVP last year? Aaron Rodgers. Who won the Super Bowl the year before? Patrick Mahomes. Who won MVP? Lamar Jackson. If you look at the guys, these small quarterbacks aren't winning. Last guy to win it was Russell Wilson, and that was 2013, I believe. 2014. I could be wrong, but playing in big games matters. Having a bigger arm matters. Winning big games matters. Playing better competition. All that matters. But, again, I'm not a GM, but what I see, this is what I see. It looks a little fishy in the NBA draft while you're choosing Zach Wilson, who had one good year, over a guy, Justin Fields, who's been playing the best competition since he was a junior in high school. Anyways, I do think this draft class can be one of the best QB draft classes ever. With Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is a bad player, but I'm just saying. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, which is Justin Fields every single day of the week. Trey Lance. Also, I think with these trades, let's get back to the trades. I sort of went on a little rant right there. But back to the trades. I think the Eagles are showing Jalen, either that we trust you, man. We're going to give you a year, at least a year. We're going to see what you can do. We're going to get you some help, and I think you can get Jalen Waddle with the 12th pick to help Jalen Hurts. So I definitely, and there will be, if Jalen Waddle gets picked early, there will be another quarterback who's going to get taken. So wide receiver who will be available. So, yeah, and I think the Dolphins, at first I said, okay, they believed into it, but with the 6th pick, they can still get a solid quarterback. They can get a Justin Fields, apparently, who's going to drop in the draft. They can get a Trey Lance. Because another guy, Pitts, if he drops, he deserves to be, he's a top pick in the draft. If he gets picked early, there's definitely a spot in there for Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance to get drafted, because Penny Sewell, I believe that's his name, for who's going to get drafted for who's the offensive lineman out of Oregon, is going to get drafted in there. So there's going to be at least 2 solid quarterbacks there with the 6th pick, or one maybe. But I think they need a wide receiver. That's who they really need, a wide receiver. I talked about the Ravens. They signed Sammy Watkins. Again, great job just for the Ravens. A team that gets it, I believe. But really a team that gets it. You need a wide receiver, you get a wide receiver. Everyone sees it, you get it. Good pick. Good pick up. But again, I think you just drafted Tua last year, and I think everyone was sort of hyping up Herbert a little bit last year, but he was good, but I don't think he's as great as everyone thinks. I think he's going to be great, but I just think, this is what happens. You give him so much praise his rookie year, and then his next year he's going to slump, and then everyone's going to be like, well, he doesn't look as good, and then the next year he's going to pick it back up, which usually is what happens, and everyone's going to say, well, remember, I always believed in him. It's just, I think Justin Herbert, solid, but we haven't seen the best of him yet, and he's going to dip, just like every other quarterback does somewhat in their second year. But I definitely think they need a wide receiver to make Tua a little bit better. And with a defense like they have, you don't need a guy who's going to make plays like a Josh Allen. You need a game manager, sort of what Tua is. And I think what will not help Tua and will not help the Dolphins is this new NFL expansion thing that's going on, where 17 games happen. And at first, it's starting in 2021 season, so it may start this season. I think it's starting, I don't know when it starts, but I think it starts this season. And personally, if you were to ask me, I understand both sides of it, because the owners want to make more money with 17 games. And the athletes have to understand that, hey, it's a business decision, man. It's entertainment, Even though, we care about you. I'm putting quotes up. But the problem is, at first it's going to be cool. You're going to play 17 games. It's going to be fun. But later on, when the mileage starts to add up, the mileage adds up with 16 games. I think what they have to do, they have to extend the season to 19 weeks, first of all. 19 weeks? What do you mean? Come on. They need 2 bye weeks. You got to add another bye week if you're going to have 17 games. You got to. Because what's going to happen is, at first it's going to get worse, but then the quality is going to get worse and worse. Because players aren't going to give their all, because they have to change the way they go about things. Because it's 17 weeks instead of 16 weeks. So the quality is going to get worse. Players won't be going as hard. There's going to be more injuries. Then when there's more injuries, the playoffs get worse. The playoffs is worse because players are getting more injured. And the playoff contenders are most likely are going to be the ones going hardest. So when you go the hardest, usually you're going to get injured when you go hard and you play a more physical style of football. And then it trickles down into the playoffs. And when the playoffs aren't as good, what does that mean? That means the Super Bowl isn't as good. That means that your biggest money maker, or your biggest market place where you make your most money somewhat, or a lot of money, is the Super Bowl, and the quality of the Super Bowl isn't going to be as good. We're going to have a lot of Carolina-Denver Super Bowls, a lot of Seattle, Denver Super Bowls. Surprising Denver was in both the Super Bowls. Maybe it's Denver. But you're going to have a lot of low-quality Super Bowl games and a lot of low-quality regular season games, a lot of low-quality playoff games, and it's going to trickle down and trickle down and trickle down. So short-term, this looks good. But over the course of time, when players aren't playing as hard, when players are saving their bodies, when players are getting injured more because of an extra game, even though a lot of people will say it's just one extra game, I think you have to add a bye week. So it's going to be 18 weeks, so make it 19 weeks. Each team gets 2 bye weeks. Everyone will like a 19-week season. The players will like a 19-week season. If you get 2 bye weeks, have one early around game 6 and have one for most teams around game 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You cannot. One bye week for 16 weeks is always a lot. Already a lot. And you want to have Thursday night maybe it's cool now. And I always see Alvin Kamara having disdain for it. I think if you're going to have 17 games, you need to stop the Thursday night games at least. and you need to add another bye week. Because this is, in about 4 to 5 years, the entertainment quality, I do believe, will get worse because of all those things I listed earlier. So, in soccer news or football news, real football news, international break was this week. If your team didn't do well, take a deep breath. I'll take a deep breath with you. There's still time to make the World Cup. There's still time to make Euro. And I don't think there's time to make Euros, but there's still time for everything. If you're in the Olympics, not so much. USA lost this week. Sort of a big deal, but not a big deal. I say it's a big deal because that's what's supposed to be our new calling card, the United States youth. Our youth coming up. We have a player at Bayern Munich. We have Christian Pulisic. We have Gio Reyna. We have Tyler Adams. We have the guy who plays for Juventus. I have his face in my mind, but I can't remember what his name is. But we have all these young players, and the tournament for the young players is the Olympics, and we're losing. So, are young players really that good? It's just one of those things that sort of mess with your mind a little bit. But all I want to say is get back to it. Get back to all. If you're in panic mode, your team, the United States is a bowling pot, so usually people, both the United States and usually the country of origin. But if your team isn't as good as they are today, or isn't as good as they are, it won't sustain forever. I remember Colombia lost to Ecuador a few before quarantine, like 2019, and everyone was sort of panicking. Colombian fans were panicking. Relax. Like the NCAA tournament, the 1 and 2 seeds are gonna rise. The cream's gonna rise to the top. You're gonna be all right. This is what makes the World Cup great in some ways. The World Cup qualifiers, where teams like Panama get into the World Cup, even though sort of like the not exactly like the NFL, but the entertainment value decreases in the World Cup, I think. When you put Panama into a group with England, Belgium, and Tunisia, and they're losing game 6-0. Great for the morale of Panama. Yeah, they made the World Cup, but for me, the entertainment value, I want to see the United States. Maybe the United States with England. That history. I just feel like it would have been better. That's why I don't really particularly like upsets, because usually the upsets happen once. Not everyone's really an Oral Roberts. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, you made it to the 3-16, but usually what happens, Oral Roberts beats Ohio State, then they get blown out by Florida, and it just sort of kills the tournament, because Ohio State's probably better than Florida. And that's what sort of happened with Panama. Yeah, great, yeah, you beat them, but yeah, now you're playing England, now you're playing Belgium, now you're playing Tunisia, and these guys are constantly in the World Cup, have the best players in the world. And it sort of kills the entertainment value. Sort of not a waste of a game, but it is sort of a waste of a game. But we're getting to around the 50-minute mark, so I just want to go through my predictions sort of quickly. EPL starts, English Premier League starts this week. Club competitions start this week again. Club leagues start again this week after international break. Big cities, big games of the week end. Leicester City versus Manchester City. Manchester City sort of had a little break. All the players have a little break. All the players are in form. Man City's they should beat them around 3-1. I always choose to say Manchester City's gonna score 3 goals. I don't know why, but they're just the most dangerous team, at least in the Premier League. Once it gets Champions League time, maybe not. But the big game of the season, or big game of the week, is Arson versus Liverpool. Liverpool need this victory. And as I said, I pray that Liverpool do not make the Europa League, because there's no point in playing the Europa League. There's really no point. Liverpool wins 2-0, and I'm saying this, sort of speaking this into existence like LeVar Ball. They need to win so they make the top 4. And speaking of 4, the final 4. Houston versus Baylor. Who you got? I got Baylor. I want Houston to win. I don't know why. African American coach. That's definitely probably the reason why. Like Houston, like Meg Thee Stallion. I like Beyonce. But I think Baylor's going to pull it out. But, as I said, the best player on Baylor is Mitchell. Butler can't. I hope he does step up. You never want a guy to play bad, but he can step up. If he starts making those shots that he's getting, good shots, again, he's a good shot taker. I definitely think Baylor will definitely blow them out if Butler steps up and beats the guy who everyone says he is. But the thing about Baylor is I don't understand why people play so high up on Mitchell. When I watch him, every Arkansas playing high up on Mitchell, he's faster than everybody, so he's going to beat you. Play off of him. I know he's a 45% free throw three-point shooter. That's what everyone's saying who's listening to this. But with Houston's size, you can play off him, and if you step back, you have the size to contest with him. Excuse my cracking elbow if you heard it throughout the podcast. That's my elbow. I talk with my hands. That's what I do. So popping is gonna happen. But anyways, you can contest him because he's only 6'1". Quentin Grimes, as I said, Sasser's 6'3", and he's one of the shortest guys. But the guy who's probably going to be guarding will probably be Sasser. I don't know. Again, they don't switch a lot, but Baylor likes to when somewhat switches. It's going to be an interesting game if who's going to conform to the other team. But anyways, Baylor, he's shorter, so you got to contest a little bit less. And yeah, I just think there's a way to stop him, and the way isn't to play up on him. I think it was really bad coaching by Villanova. Surprisingly, they have a very good coach, but somewhat bad coaching by Arkansas and Villanova by playing so high up on him. You got to play off him, give him space, and if he shoots, you have your size to fall back on to contest. Gonzaga versus UCLA. UCLA had a great season, great tournament run, but Gonzaga is just Gonzaga. I definitely hope it's a good game. Maybe Gonzaga, they can do what Notre Dame did to Kentucky when Kentucky went undefeated, show some more kinks in their armor, and then maybe a Baylor can beat Gonzaga, but again, my pick is Gonzaga, so I hope Gonzaga wins. I want to witness history. I like witnessing history. I like witnessing the best. I like seeing the best. But that's my Final Four position. I got Gonzaga winning it all, as I said from the very beginning. But congratulations to all the teams who made the Final Four. Congratulations to the women's. I believe Arizona, UConn, Stanford. I don't remember the last team that made it. But congratulations to all the teams on the women's side who made the Final Four. Was it a foul? Was it not a foul? I think it was a foul with Baylor UConn, but I believe UConn definitely got there are definitely some calls that I saw on the UConn side that weren't getting called. So it's sort of evened out. It always usually evens out. Baylor, but I don't know how old. I don't remember. I think the Carrington young lady who got fouled, she's a freshman or a sophomore, so she'll be back. Baylor's going to be back. That's something I'm not really worried about. And most of those ladies have won a national championship. That's all I really want. Win one national championship, in your career, and I'm good. But that's in the podcast. New article up on Friday. Thank you guys again for listening. I've been seeing you guys been listening more to the YouTube, but again, thank you guys for listening. I may have some guests on sooner or later. I just really want to get my feet wet, and but definitely around week 10ish, week 13ish, definitely look for more guests. Some of my friends may come on, but they may not get up early enough. Actually, I do this at 7 o'clock. I better get ready around 6 to get everything prepared. But again, thank you guys. Have a good finish this week out strong. Finish March out strong, even though you don't have a lot of time in March, but finish out strong. Set some goals for April, man. It helps. I'm telling you, it helps set some goals that you want to accomplish for April. But anyways, thank you guys. We're about to get to an hour. Yeah. Thank you.